Hi, my name is Victor. I'm a student at ASU and I'm gonna do a quick demo of the Double Reader Intelligent Tutoring System. I developed this ITS for the ITS class taught by Professor VanLehn at ASU on spring 2014. So the Double Reader ITS aims at teaching some basic concepts, processes, tools for making double reads, which are used in instruments like oboes, bassoons, English horns. The double reader currently is supporting mostly the oboe, but it can be easily adapted to these other instruments as well. Alright, so let's start with the demo. So first of all, the double reader has three modes. Okay, so the explore mode, time pressure mode, and debugging mode. The explore mode lets the user freely explore the environment, trying to make a read without any constraints. The time pressure mode puts a time constraint in there, where the student has to do the full read before time runs out. And the debugging mode randomly selects a scenario for the student, and this scenario includes a complete read, but that has some problems, like the tuning is not right, or the resistance is not right as well. So the student has to identify the problem through the tools provided in the ITS, and he has to fix the problems. Okay, so for the explore mode, let's start. So this is the main UI for the double reader ITS. Here on the left you can see the materials you can use, such as cane, thread. Here on the right you can see some tools like cutting block or shaper, and here on the top you see some actions that you can do. For example, you can play a C on the keyboard. Okay, so let's see how the basic interactions occur in this ITS. The main form of interacting with materials and tools is through drag and drop actions. So if I drag the cane onto the workbench, you see that the cane was added here to the workbench, okay? And you can also drag things not only to the workbench, but also to other materials already added to the workbench. So for example, if I get the shaper and I drop it on the cane, it's gonna give you a response. So right now the cane was dry, so it broke. So it's targeting a certain error, okay, and trying to tell you what to do next. But so it starts over once you break the read. And there are two forms of getting help on the ITS. So if you click on the help button, you get read manual and get hint, okay? So on the read manual, you get a manual on how to make the reads. So right now, I'm basically using a page created by Professor Martin Schuring. He's here from ASU as well. I added his link here. And he basically gives you a lot of good material on how to make reads. Though for the purposes of this ITS, it may be a little too much, and it doesn't target specific interactions with the ITS. So this is more of an example right now. Given time constraints, I wasn't able to actually develop the manual for this ITS. But this is basically an HTML page. You can easily replace it with the appropriate one for this tool. Okay? And you can also get hints. So if I click the help button and I select get hint, it's gonna give me a hint. So you can see that it starts pretty broad. Is the cane ready? So it tells me that I need to do something with the cane. But what is it that I need to do? So let's say I'm still stuck and I want to get another hint. Oh, the system says that you have to at least try something before asking for another hint. So this is a very simple mechanism that the ITS employs to try to avoid gaming. So try to avoid help abuse. Alright, so let's try something. I don't know, let's try adding a cutting block. I don't know, maybe I need to cut the cane somehow. So now I can get another hint. And it says you need to shape the cane, but is it ready for that? It's still kind of broad. But let me try adding the cane here, because it has something to do with it. So the cane needs to be wet before it's shaped. Oh, so it needs to be wet. So there's something related to water. So I can drag the water onto the workbench. Okay, and here's the water. Let me remove the cane from the workbench. And the cane is dry, so I need to add the cane to the water. So let's try this. Oh, the cane is now wet. Alright, so now I could drag the cane back here, and let's try doing the shaper again. Last time it broke because the reed was dry, but now it's wet. So let's see what happens. So the cane was shaped. Alright, so the workbench shows that the cane was shaped. You can see a visual difference in here. Okay. Alright, so what should we do now? From now on, I'm just gonna complete the read so you can see the interactions. Okay. So here I'm dragging the easel towards the reed because before doing anything else, we want to thin the ends of the cane. Okay. And just a disclaimer that I should have said earlier. This ITS aims to teach some concepts, but it is by no means very extremely detailed. Okay, so some things we may be simplifying for the sake of time and difficulty, given the constraints of this class. But it should be enough to give a really good overview of the whole process. Okay, so let's try thinning the end. So basically there's the scraping knife and the cutting knife. Let's use the scraping knife for that. So here you can see another form of interaction that happens. Sometimes maybe a tool can be used for more than one thing. So here I drop the knife onto the cane and it gives me three options. So I can scrape, I can prepare for a cut, and I can thin the ends. So let's thin the ends right now. So it gives you a confirmation message. Okay. So now I can remove this from the workbench. I can remove this too. Just take the clutter away. And the next step would be to add the tube. Okay. So as soon as I add the tube, you can see that the cane was folded and placed onto the tube. Okay. So we need the mandrel before we can tie, because the next step is to tie the cane to the tube. So let me just drag the mandrel here to the cane, and you can see that it was added. Alright, so now we can basically add the thread, and boom, the cane is tied. Okay. Okay, so now I've jumped ahead to the state where the reed is ready for scraping. Okay, so let's try that. Let's choose scrape now. So when you choose scrape, you get into a new mode. Okay, so this is what I call the scrape mode. So here it's like you zoomed in into the tip of the reed, and you're ready for scraping it. Okay. So the first thing that it asks you is to define the sizes for a couple of areas of the reed. Okay, so the first one is the tip, and let's define it around here. Okay, you have to drag the bottom corner of the red square to set the area. All right. So the second area is the heart, and the third one, which I'm setting right now, is the back. Okay, so now the areas are set. Okay, and you can toggle some tools here, the cutting block for example, or the plaque. Okay, and let's actually try playing the reed right now. So let's try playing with the oboe. Oh, so it's not playable yet. Or let's try the crow. So it is not playable yet. So you need to scrape it at least a little bit before you can actually try playing it, right? So let's try scraping the tip. So you have these three tools here. So the first one is the tip, second one is the heart, and the third one is the back. So let me click here, and as I click, you can see that the area gets a little bit lighter. Okay, so that means that you're scraping. So let's scrape a little bit the heart as well. You can see that the area changes as well, and the back. Alright, so you can see that the reed starts taking shape. So let's try playing it right now. So it is vibrating, you can play it already, but it's far from ideal yet. It's still too resistant. Okay, so you need to scrape a little bit more. Or let's try the crawl. So it still the tuning is a little bit low, and I'll show you how we can test it later. And the sounds may be a little off here, but they're just for example as well, and they can be easily adjusted. So maybe the tuning is a little off on the system as well, but that can be easily adjusted. Alright, so let's try scraping a little bit more. Alright, let's try playing again. Oh, now it's good. So the system doesn't give you any indicators on how much you need to scrape, because this is a very it depends on the material that you have, on each cane that you do, so this varies a lot, and you need to test it all the time. So the goal of the system right now is to get you to click on this play with oboe constantly to see how the reed is doing. Alright, and the other one is the crawl. So related to tuning, so you can change the tuning so it's a little bit lower. You can make the tuning higher by cutting the reed. So let's put the cutting block here again, and let's cut it a little bit. Alright, so let's see how it goes. Still a little bit low. And just to show you some interesting things as well, so if you forget the cutting block and you try to cut it, you get a message. You can't cut the reed directly on the table, it was too expensive. So it's trying to remind you that you need something to cut it on. If you try to cut it with the plaque, it gives you a message as well. So let's add the cutting block in here, and you can cut it. Okay, so whenever the user tries to do an action that he's not supposed to, the system is gonna tell him something about that. Okay, so let's try cutting a little bit more, and let's try again. Still a little bit low, so let's cut it a little bit more. Oh, now it's good. Alright, so you can compare with the C here. So the sounds are a little bit off, but that's, again, that can be easily changed and fixed. Alright, so now the reed is good. So we can close this, and you can see that the reed is scraped here as well, which is nice. So one last thing that I want to show is testing for a leak. So many times maybe you have a leak on how you tied it, or maybe on the sides of the cane. So let's see if there's anything here. Okay, so there are no leaks, but if there were any, so this is actually random. So the system randomly decides if the reed that you tied, it has leaks on either the thread or on the sides of the cane. So if there were any of those and you clicked on test for leak, you would tell you that there was a leak, but then you had to test. And how could you test this? You could add the plastic wrap to the thread, for example, and you can see here that you added the wrap there, and you could test for a leak, and then it could tell you if there was any or not. Alright, and so here's your completed read. So now that you're done, you can click the done button. This opens up the review pane. So here you can see some measurements on the reed that you just created. So you can see that there was no leak. The tuning was still a little bit high. The system is a little bit absolute in that sense. It just tells you if it's high, if it's good within a certain range, or if it's too low. So you don't really have a way to adjust this. Ideally you would if the sounds were more accurate. Okay, but here you can see that it is within a reasonable range of tuning and resistance. And here you can see the measurements. That's when you drag those red boxes around, so they also are shown here. Okay, if you click OK, you go back to the main menu. So just to show you the time pressure now. if you click here, you can see the same thing, the same scenario, the same tools, but you see this little timer here. Whenever the timer is over, um, the result screen shows up, and if you're not done, this is not going to look good for you. Okay? So let me just, the last thing that I want to show is the debugging mode. If you click here, it says that there's something not right with this read, so you have to fix it. Alright? So the goal of this is for you to identify and fix mistakes in the read. Okay? So one of the things you can test is for a leak, and you can see, oh, there's a leak somewhere. So we can try adding the rep to the thread here. Let's test it. There's still a leak somewhere. So let's try adding it to the cane here. Okay, so you fix the leaks. Okay, so let's try playing with the oboe, and you can see that it's still resistant. Okay, and let's try crawl. So the tuning is good. So let's improve on the resistance. Let's drag the scraping knife and enter the scraping mode. You can see clearly that it's not very scraped. It is very, you can see the bark very clearly here. So let's put the plaque on, and let's try scraping the tip a little bit. Okay, you can see it's getting lighter, so let's try playing. Alright, so it needs a little bit more, so let's try again. It's perfect. Alright, and even though it's perfect right now, let me also show you what happens if you cut things too much, or if you scrape it too much. So you can see that the attack was very strong and sound wasn't very nice, so the reed is too light now. Alright, and if you cut it too much, you can see that the reed was a bit too high now. And this reflects on the last. The resistance and tuning were off, okay, very off. So this is the overview you get there. Alright, so that was the double reader ITS. It's obviously still very early on its development, and given the time constraints on the class, there were some things that I needed to simplify. So the scraping, there's a lot of things like the corridors and things like that that I didn't include on the model, and you'll definitely be very important to include them. And it shouldn't be too hard from the spot on. The main interactions are defined. You just have to include those in the model, but that takes a little bit of time, so I wasn't able to add it. And obviously the material as well, the manual could improve, and the content could be specifically tailored to the ITS, and you could have some content on interaction as well, so how to use the system, which is very important as well. Maybe the scaffolding could improve, so give the users more structure, especially in the beginning when they start using the system. What should I do now, and things like that. I think currently it has a nice system, but maybe it's not ideal. So we could experiment with that a little bit more. And it would be definitely interesting to play with the models as well. So maybe if the read is always whenever the user finishes with the read, usually he gets the tuning wrong. So maybe you could propose problems specifically for practicing the tuning and things like that. Okay. So this was a basic overview, and I just said some things that I think the system could improve on. But overall, this is a very interesting experience, and hopefully this can proceed to something, to a nice system, and hopefully it could be useful for someone. All right, thank you.